Hello and welcome to another Takeda episode of the Eternal Law. Last time we saw that our allies the Imagawa were being besieged by the Tokugawa from the west, and we tried to move our new general Nobukado down to deal with them when they started invading Suruga. This led to a siege assault in which Takeda reinforcements rushed in to do battle with the Tokugawa army, and eventually in a huge cavalry melee defeated their leadership and caused the whole Tokugawa force to retreat. Later, the Uesugi clan from the north declared war on the Takeda, a new threat to deal with. In response, the Takeda allied themselves to the Satomi and the Anagakoji to the southeast and northwest. With these flanks secure, Takeda Shingen leads an army towards the Uesugi lands. Where will he go next? Let's find out. Felt the shortage of hands again today. Things are different to how they used to be. My farmhands used to go to war for a single season and then return. Now Lord Takeda recruits them as paid soldiers, false samurai, and I'll be lucky to see 1/10 of my workers ever return. This war that concerns him so much. I wager that if he really wanted peace, he would not fight it at all. No. Takeda Shingen simply buys his personal desires for power with the failure of my crops. So we're back with the Takeda. It is the spring of 1548 and here is Shingen's army, which last time we saw was marching towards the Uesugi lands. Here's what the Uesugi have: visibly a small but unknown compositional army, still quite far away from my location. Down here in the south we also had the issue that the Hojo declared war on us in the last Takeda episode, and here we have Nobukado's army, which is pulled back from defending the Imagawa castle, just in case the Hojo pull anything on us.
The Nodachi requires great skill from its master. Its size makes the bearer vulnerable in melee defense, but on the charge, it is deadly. So
the Nodaichi samurai video plays, no idea why, because I didn't recruit any. Oh well. The Kiso have had their trade disrupted, and here you see they've been destroyed. What happened? Well, it looks like the Oda have invaded and usurped the Kiso's position in South Shinano. This is a bit of an issue because now we suddenly have a very exposed flank at North Shinano, and really all I can do is move Takeda Shingen's army back in order to defend the territory. So my cheeky offensive strategy has already failed. I'm going to have to come back and play the defensive a little more. At first I started moving him back towards the castle, but then I decided actually to slightly divert him and hide the majority of the army in the forest beside the castle, still pulling the old open fort tactic, just to see if I can prompt any Oda forces to march north and show themselves, forcing them to play their hand. I did decide though I'd try and detach a force to put them inside the castle, so if a battle takes place I'll have forces both inside and outside the castle to work with. However, they didn't have enough movement points to get in this turn, but they'll be restored for next time, so we'll see. Back down here in the south, we can see the Imagawa have built up a very small army, only 4 units, not enough to stop the Tokugawa if they decide to invade again. However, I can't help them at the moment, just because of this Hojo issue. So I'm moving Nobukado's force a little bit closer to this Imagawa. I think that's a school of philosophy there, just in case the Hojo attempt to sabotage it. And I'm moving more reinforcements down from Kai to act as a reinforcement army to Nobukado in case he manages to spring an ambush on the road he's hiding beside. So now I have a fair chance of an ambush there, 3 armies ready to attack any Hojo forces passing by the area. Oh, and what's this? When I end the turn, an Oda army suddenly appears, ignores North Shinano and starts marching south towards Kai. That was unexpected. I did not expect them to attack me so soon after defeating the Kiso. They didn't even wait a single turn to occupy the province and prepare their army. They just came straight for us. So suddenly we have a situation to deal with, and it turned out to be very fortuitous that I pulled back Shingen's army. Otherwise I would be severely overextended and this would have been the end of the campaign. We master a new civil art, and I'm switching now to the strategy of attack, which will allow me to recruit Boa Shigaru in future turns. So let's have a look at the Oda situation. Here it is. It's an army led by their daimyo, Oda Nobuhide. Looks like it has a fair number of samurai in it, at least a small number of cavalry and archers. A quite powerful looking army. However, it does appear to be depleted, so they probably didn't actually recover any troops after defeating the Kiso. And this is going to be the one advantage I do have over them, because in all other respects my army looks like it's going to be a little bit inferior. I'm going to have to try and patch something together. First I moved those reinforcements from Nobukado back to Kai to garrison the castle. I was considering moving Nobukado himself back, but instead I wanted to check whether Shingen can deal with this. Unfortunately, he can't reach Nobuhide's position in a single turn of movement, which means Nobuhide is going to have at least one turn of free reign. So all I can do is try and influence his decisions so that he doesn't attack Kai on North Shinano and instead attacks a field army where I actually stand a chance of defeating him. I'm gathering such a field army under Shingen here, changing the composition with a reinforcement detachment in order to make the main army the stronger group, sending the remaining Yari Ashigaru back to sit in North Shinano and just hold the place down. So there's nothing I can do now. The Oda army is going to sit there. However, what I am going to do is move Nobukado back up to a reinforcement position on Kai, because this means if Nobuhide decides to march south and invade Kai, Nobukado's army will be able to do siege relief just like they did with the Imagawa, only this time they'll be doing it on our own home province. Inside the castle itself, I begin recruiting new forces. I don't think they would actually be ready before the Oda attack begins, but at least in spirit, I wanted to get this area as strong as possible. So now it's time to end the turn and see what's going to happen with this situation. Sure enough, the Oda army marches north instead of south and attacks Shingen's field army. This is good news, but still the battle might not be so easy. They appear to have a strong heavy infantry advantage. We have a slight cavalry advantage, so we're going to have to try and use maneuverability to defeat this army, as well as a bit of Shingen's characteristic deception strategies. Let us see what's going to happen. The fact he offers battle at all is a sure enough sign. He will send everything in his first charge and leave no rearguard. It will be up to you to move through the woods to the west and strike Nobuhide and his command staff from behind. I have a plan to hold their army in place at the front, but it shall not last forever. They shall see that having the greater body of samurai means nothing when there are Takeda horsemen on the field. And so the Takeda force takes up its formation here, partially in a forest. On the right flank we have cavalry and a few Naginata Ashigaru guarding the flank, all hidden in these trees, as well as part of the main line here. The main line being formed of spears and long spears at the front, basically designed to hold the enemy in place, with a reserve of softer sword units just to plug gaps in the line as they appear. Archers positioned behind screens at the front to provide little skirmishing support as the battle opens. Here Yari Samurai and Naginata Ashigaru guarding the flanks, and this is also where the main body of shock cavalry is stationed, ready to start doing a little bit of trickery with the Oda army once it gets nearer. Here is the huge Oda army marching towards us. They have a large skirmishing force at the front, far larger than my own archer regiment, so if they wanted they could force me to move by staying at a distance and just shooting at me. But of course the Oda army seem to be very impetuous. They are just charging straight forwards into battle. The main force is marching straight towards the centre and right flank of my main force, left flank of my force, sorry, with my right flank remaining in hiding. And they're going to be quite useful for foldering around the enemy's force later on. We saw just there the enemy is detaching a large body of its cavalry off to its right flank, attacking my left. I started responding by placing a baked unit of cavalry up on a hill to try and draw the enemy cavalry towards that one. The plan being to then lure them down into my spears and Naginatas guarding the left flank, if possible. You can see the enemy has their subordinate general leading this force. We're going to follow this little cavalry detachment and see what they see as they come over this hill towards the flank of the Takeda force. They're in a very fine position in their opinion. They can charge down and almost get around the back of the army. However, as they were moving, I was moving my flank guards, extending the echelon a little so it wouldn't actually be possible for them to get around the back. And apparently seeing this, they kind of abandoned their strategy and tried to just run along the front of the line. However, I moved the left flank of the line forward to intercept them. Meanwhile, look at this. The enemy subordinate general leading the raid apparently still decided to try and do a rear attack. and because he was isolated from the rest of his force, I decided to assassinate him, sent Nobushige and some supporting cavalrymen over there to finish him off. You can see the rest of the cavalry detachment is now being caught up by the Naginatas and spears. Also some Takeda Fire cavalry has charged and hit from the side, so these guys are in trouble. However, they are fairly strong horsemen. They'll hold out for a little bit, and you can see over here on the left the main engagement is just about beginning. You can see a few arrows flying back and forward between the skirmishing forces. Takeda Fire cavalry is much more powerful than the enemy's light cavalry here and are really taking them down. But the enemy's main body and some cavalry reserve are now charging into this pile, so that cavalry fight is going to get a little complicated. Here we can see the main lines beginning to engage. The enemy simply charges in to these long Yari walls. Their charge was heavy enough that some of the men started to break the Yari wall even from the beginning. I was hoping it would hold out a little bit longer than that. It was fairly effective. A lot of the spear wall was actually cut down by arrows just before the charge began, which I didn't show there. Now here some of the enemy have broken off, well, they've broken off almost their entire left flank, and here's why. I have a huge light cavalry detachment racing around to the enemy's rear side that just broke out of the forest where it was hiding. Nobuhide himself charges forwards. My objective had been to go around the back and assassinate Nobuhide. He moves forwards in response to my attack. See here I'm occupying these horsemen by just defeating their archer element, just removing them from the picture. Now the enemy move back some of their light cavalry from that big cavalry melee on my left flank, and they begin engaging with the light cavalry that I have. A fairly even-sided fight, though the Takeda light cavalry are slightly better simply for being from the Takeda clan and having more experience. You can see here that the centre left of my line is beginning to break. The spear wall has been pretty much defeated, so at this point I deployed the reserve line. They're rushing into battle to plug this gap. I'm also deploying troops over into the melee on the left side because I saw an exposed enemy rear. But you can see that my troops just kind of jog up. They're pretty casual. Only one guy actually comes in to get involved. He gets a kill straight away. Pretty good. Some arrows fly in from somewhere, and my guy gets cut down in a little bit of confusion there. So out here, what I'm doing is I'm using my shock cavalry is just walking backwards and forwards because I'm drawing off large elements of the enemy's main line from the flanks, and basically what happened is that my right flank started folding around the enemy's centre at this point because I'd drawn off so many of their units. They didn't have enough men to properly defend their own centre, so they began to get surrounded in the centre. Even though they had the infantry advantage, they didn't have the formational advantage, which kind of cancelled it out and meant I would still have a chance to beat them in the centre. Way back out here you can see the fighting against the enemy general is actually still going on. He fought for a long time. Didn't really want to go down. Basically this was because Nobuhide decided to go and support him. Here's Nobuhide himself. A very foolish move from Nobuhide. He's abandoned his own army to fight with Nobushige and his horsemen.
Is in grave danger, my lord.
He's going to fight on to the end, but I don't believe he's going to be killed. He actually escapes the battlefield. All of his bodyguards except him die, and he flees the field towards the end of the battle. Now you can see the enemy centre has pretty much completely broken. You can see Takeda horsemen just storming around. The last main pocket of enemy power is here on the left flank, where I've started to fold around them. You can see the enemy's Naginata samurai, a very sturdy unit which doesn't go down easy, is fighting on with some of my sword Ashigaru here. Meanwhile the one remaining unit of long spears I have is gradually pushing them back, taking out some of their men and folding around on two sides basically to defeat this unit.
My lord! A glorious victory will soon be yours!
So the enemy generals have fled the field, very few enemy troops remain, and you can see Takeda horsemen are dominating the centre as the entire central line now chases after the breaking enemy forces. This unit of samurai, which hadn't even engaged in the battle, tries to run but is caught by some Ashigaru as they go, and a whole bunch of them are just cut down, not even having a chance to take part in the battle before being killed at the very end. So Nobuhide's army has been foolishly defeated. Although Nobuhide himself still lives, we'll have to chase him down a little bit later. But still, the Takeda lands are safe, and the Oda have been taught a huge lesson in Takeda's elite cavalry warfare. We were playing into Shingen's hands from the very beginning. I thought it was we who would obey the rules of war, but to see him command his men like that has left me shamed by his skill. There was never any hope for us here. And now we must face the winter with those ruinous Takeda horsemen at our heels. Those of you who have mounts, follow me south. Those without, I dismiss you from my service. and wish you a quick death by their spears. On the results screen we see that one unit of Long Yari Ashigaru was completely destroyed, whereas the rest of the army remains relatively healthy. Some of the infantry units taking a bit of a beating, but mainly the army is still going, whereas Oda Nobuhide's army has been almost completely destroyed, reduced to less than 100 men. Nobuhide actually levels up after that conflict we just saw there, which is strange. Perhaps the experience of losing taught him something. And there we see the Uesugi main force appears at our border and takes their seat. So it looks like the Uesugi are now making their move, but they're still 2 turns of marching away from the capital of North Shinano, Matsumoto Castle. So it's not an immediate emergency. But still, we're going to have to be on the lookout for where that army is going to go next and prepare some sort of ambush for them ideally. We get a message saying that the Yamanouchi are threatening to attack us. They're the clan to our east over here, and Takeda Nobushige has leveled up after the last battle. So here are the Yamanouchi. They have a large army which we don't know anything about at the moment, camped just outside their castle on the road towards North Shinano, so this could be an issue. Here's the Uesugi force we saw. We have a little intelligence on it. It has some katana Waco here. They are basically pirates, not as disciplined and effective as normal samurai, but far superior to Ashigaru soldiers, which make up the majority of the Takeda force at the moment, so still a bit of a threat. Nobuhide is here with just a small body of Yari samurai following him around, hiding in the forests, but still very vulnerable to any sort of attack we can make. I start moving Shingen's army north. The idea is to set up an ambush just in front of Matsumoto Castle, draw the Uesugi really deep into our territory, and then ambush them where we are strongest on the grounds outside the castle. Again, it's kind of a form of open fort strategy, but still I am going to be reinforcing the castle garrison by recruiting new units into it, with the vague intention of giving Nobushige his own field army for the upcoming campaign, seeing as he's been a follower of Shingen long enough. It's time to give him his own command. Nobukado down in the south, I'm actually going to move him up, because with all the threats from the Yamanouchi to consider, it seems the battlefront for the future of Takeda is going to be in North Shinano. On the way, of course, I can take out Oba Nobuhide and his small group, which I'm going to do via auto-resolve, since it would be not very exciting to see this huge army kill less than 100 enemies. And there we go, it's been completely defeated. Oda Nobuhide has paid the price for his aggressive move, attacking the Takeda, and now lies dead in the snow of Kai. Nobukado leveled up, which is pretty handy, so let's go in and assign him a retainer. I'm choosing here this Sojutsu Master, which basically gives you +1 defense to all of your spear units, which is quite useful. Now I have to go into his personal skills, and I'm going to choose to go down the warrior pathway rather than the strategist pathway, because it seems that Nobukado so far is proving himself to be more of a bloodthirsty warrior than a cunning strategist. But I do give him 1 point in strategy, just because it makes him a little more logistically aware. He can move his troops further per turn, which is always useful. We saw that Nobushige leveled up as well, so let's assign him his retainers and skills. I'm going to pick for him the Biwa player, which gives you +1 morale for all units in his army, which is an extremely good bonus. Having morale is very useful tactically, because it lets you hang on for longer and employ more tactics rather than losing by brute force, which so far has been the thing keeping the Takeda alive. And there we go, I'm giving Nobushige his own command of the army being constructed in the castle. So now we move to the end of this winter, and what is this?
We should discuss matters of mutual interest, so that all may profit and flourish as a result.
The Oda want peace. They've sent a diplomat suing for peace, and I decided to be somewhat greedy and start making demands as an attachment to this peace deal. I asked for 1,000 gold pieces. They said they might be able to come to an agreement.
Your proposal is interesting, but it would be unwise for us to accept it.
It seems they cannot accept, or perhaps just will not accept. Down in the south, the Hojo attack the Satomi again, but the Satomi appear to defeat them, and the Uesugi force, as expected, moves deeper into Takeda lands and camps not far from Shingen's ambush. I had left the castle to welcome the Oda diplomat back from Shingen's camp. He almost spat at the sake we offered him, and took to his horse without a word. I learned later that Shingen had mocked him with a disgraceful trade for peace that he could never accept. Shingen shows his hand. He wants the Oda to try again so he can rejoice in defeating them a second time. His honor fades like a blossom sinking in a pond. Traders from the Anagokoji witnessed our scene today. No doubt they will soon spread word of this transgression, and Shingen will have himself yet another enemy to play with. So we open in the spring of 1549. Looks like the Yamanouchi are still threatening to attack. They've expanded their army with a few reinforcements, but still haven't mobilized them yet. It's also time for me to select a new art. I'm going with Way of the Bow, a fairly defensive art, which hopefully will come in useful in defending Takeda lands from the many invaders that seem to have been amassed against us.
Speak your insolence, then I will reply.
I'm going to try and redo peace with the Oda, but no, they won't have any of it. I've lost my chance of peace with the Oda. But anyway, we have to focus on the war with the Uesugi for now. I moved Shingen's army back down towards the castle in order to provide a more supporting position in case the Uesugi decide to go and assault the castle walls. Meanwhile, I needed to decide what to do with Nobukado's force. He was useful in defending the south side of the Takeda territory. However, I decided to move him north to support Shingen, basically focusing all of the Takeda might around Matsumoto Castle and gambling that nothing would really go wrong in the south. I'm putting a lot of faith in the Imagawa to hold my southern flank, and in the Satomi in fact, to make sure the Hojo don't get too strong. But for now I think I'm okay in those assumptions. So with my troop movements complete, it is time to end the turn. Let us see what the Uesugi army really does, whether they will move forward and fall for my open fort tactics. Instead of moving forward, they seem to decide to try and reinforce their main army. They move troops down from Echigo and the main army doesn't move at all, perhaps because they somehow learned of Nobukado's army out in the open south of Matsumoto and decided not to advance until they'd reinforced their army. Slightly worrying, because that means one more turn with the threat of Uesugi and one more turn without the Uesugi having been destroyed. Again, as we move into summer, the Yamanouchi threaten to attack. Their army is now even bigger than it was just now, so it's getting more and more of an issue that they seem to be willing to betray us. So here's the Uesugi army. We see there are two groups of reinforcements. We don't know very much about them, but regardless we have to do something to stop them. Now since I have such an overwhelming majority in terms of numbers in the area, I can kind of force the Uesugi back just by threatening them. So what I'm going to do is move Shingen and Nobukado's force up, and then just because this huge army is so large, the Uesugi automatically runs away because they won't do battle with an army that is that much larger than them. So now they're off in the mountains to the north, hiding in those trees. I had a couple of options. I could go after them, fight a field battle, and try and take them down. However, I didn't quite have enough movement points to confidently do this. So instead I decided to set a small double ambush, well, a large double ambush I should say, using both of these field armies in ambush to pull a giant open fort tactic, try and bring that Uesugi force down without its reinforcements towards Matsumoto, thinking it can get to the castle in safety. So let's end the turn and see what actually happens. There's more action between the Hojo and the Satomi. The Hojo are defeated again, another in a long string of defeats for the Hojo. The Tokugawa completely destroy the Imagawa suddenly, but there's no time to think about that because the trap has been successful. The Uesugi army moves down, Nobukado comes out to ambush it with Shingen coming up from behind as support. We have a huge numerical advantage, and you can see the enemy army is mostly sword and bow infantry, a type of unit that is very weak against cavalry. Looks like it's time for a field day for the Takeda. Now this was a fast battle, so you're going to have to watch closely. We started with infantry deployments on both sides of the enemy's marching column, which was mostly bows and swords, as I said, with a few cavalry and spears. On the east side we have a huge amount of Takeda katana samurai moving up heavy infantry to engage with the enemy's heavy infantry. On the other side is the lighter infantry that was immediately attacked by the enemy's cavalry detachment. However, they're going to get caught by these long spears and be destroyed. Some of the enemy's heavy infantry started coming out this way as well, however they are going to be very outnumbered. On the south side of their formation was where most of their archers were. I piled in my fire cavalry and katana cavalry to completely decimate them, and they're just going to slowly work their way through those archers for the duration of the battle. they don't stand much chance, but the enemy piled some of their cavalry in as well to counter my cav, so that's going to be the main difficulty for them, fighting their way up this small hill towards the main group of enemies. Here is said main group, now being charged by my katana samurai. You can see additional cavalry reinforcements coming in as well. Those are light Naginata horsemen, who I was using as a guard for Nobukado, but I've now detached in order to attack the enemy's centre. On the north side I have some bow cavalry firing little blobs of arrows into the enemy formation, generally breaking them up. They're not going to be doing too much damage from where they're standing now, but they're at least reducing the enemy's morale. Here comes Shingen's cavalry rushing in from the north. Shingen's army is gradually coming onto the field. The cavalry is of course first to arrive, charging into the north side of the enemy formation. The enemy responds with the last undeployed unit of their own cavalry. So now the enemy is completely committed to this battle. Over here their katana Waco are being completely destroyed by those long yari. And here's Shingen's force rushing up to the field. Once they get anywhere near the enemy army, they will just retreat, because that will be the end of the battle. So here's the view from above. You can try and get an idea of what's going on. Off to the side here, we see I'm using some of my light Naginata cavalry to draw the enemy's spear infantry away. And whilst the spear infantry chase them down, I'm smashing them with arrows from the bow cav. So now the enemy archers are destroyed. It's just the enemy katana Waco in the centre left. I set up the famous Takeda Fire cavalry charge and smash into the rear of this enemy detachment. You can see there's some archers in there as well. The cavalry just push their way in, crushing the enemy formation against the heavy katana samurai on the other side. They don't stand a chance. They're being absolutely torn to shreds, and after just a few seconds their formation completely breaks and the screen is flooded with Takeda units, just destroying the fleeing enemy. The Uesugi try and flee, but you can just see so many Takeda units crawling like ants over this hill, completely mopping up the enemy force and killing their general. So in just 2 minutes, the Uesugi army has been completely destroyed by this Takeda ambush. Looks like North Shinano is going to be safe for now. That's all for this episode, but if you want to see what happens in Oda's three-way war with the Hattori and the Iko Iki, then tune in next time to the Eternal Law.